Hey everyone, welcome back to Film Ranks. Today I want to talk about 3 things that make superhero films great, and the inspiration to this is Deadpool and Wolverine. I I definitely apologize for the last video, of course. Terrible audio, I get it. I was just messing with like the volume bar on my editing software, and unfortunately, if you put it too high, it's gonna sound robotic, and it just didn't come out great. And I also realized that I don't really speak up when I make my videos sometimes, so instead of having to edit that and make it sound worse, I'm just gonna, uh, project my voice. So I do want to talk about Deadpool and Wolverine and 3 things that make superhero genre films great. So it's going to be somewhat of a repeat of what I talked about, but it's going to have different things that I didn't mention in the video I posted. So the first thing I want to talk about is casting the right actors. The actors, Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman, they were perfect for their roles in Deadpool and Wolverine. No one can argue that or dispute it, because it would be really weird to. Obviously, Hugh Jackman isn't 5 feet or below like the original Wolverine in the comics is supposed to be, and he makes it work because he has a believable face and body to accompany his acting skills and his aggression, his anger, his flaws, fear, like the whole package of what's is to be of Wolverine. And the same thing was Ryan Reynolds. Like, Ryan Reynolds is definitely someone who's funny, who talks a lot in the film and makes it believable, and of course, is very agile, has a lot of energy, can do all these flips and combat techniques, and he makes it believable, even with choreography and like just dancing. If he chooses to dance for whatever reason he wants to, and like, he can be as silly as he wants and it's believable because that's what Deadpool's character is supposed to be. So that's what is important about casting. In short, it's just picking the right person to fit the character that's being played. There are other examples like the Avengers and how those characters are perfectly suited for those roles. I would argue that even Henry Cavill as Superman in DC, like, he feels like he was like a perfect Superman. Like, obviously wasn't perfect, but he fit his role really well in my opinion. And there's plenty of other characters between Marvel and DC where I can see like the characters were chosen well. But there is another layer of what makes films great, and it's having a good story, because you can't have good actors and a terrible story. An example of having a great cast and a not so great story was Black Widow. I don't think the villain was convincing enough to be someone that's very intimidating. I think that the villain could have been almost anyone else, and it would have been a whole lot better for the film. But aside from that, it just felt like it was lacking in the stakes of like having this villain be able to really challenge Black Widow to the point where you feel like she's gonna probably die and somehow overcome death. I didn't really feel that in that movie, so that's why I don't think it did too good. And also, the timing of that movie wasn't great because it's supposed to be pre-Infinity War and Endgame, so it was basically released long after the party was finished with all the other Avengers, because all the Thor movies that were significant were made. Iron Man, Captain America, all those characters, their films were already done and over with. And it felt like Black Widow is like, she didn't really have a movie where it's supposed to be before that. And I can understand where it's like there's a bunch of projects being focused on, and maybe Black Widow wasn't as important as up until like those Avenger films, but again, she could have also been more popular if she also had her film way beforehand, was a villain that was interesting enough. And that was also kind of a blow to Hawkeye, because Hawkeye could have found his way into a Black Widow film, of course. I think they lost the opportunity to do that, but I digress. You know, what happened happened. I can only speak on the facts and those things, but um, my bias on Black Widow, of course, fits really well with what I'm talking about, was like stories, because you know, we have other Avenger films that were really good because all the characters have good chemistry. They have dialogue that fits for their character. They're all in good physical condition. And of course, the film makes whatever you see believable in the eyes of the viewer, even though we know that there's a bunch of green screens and all of that. Like, the importance is not making you feel like, you know, it's fake. It has to feel as realistic as possible. And when films do that, even when they're fictional, you know, that's the reason why they get a box office of $1 billion over a weekend or 2 weeks of like releasing. And again, not all films have to be like that to be considered good in the eyes of someone watching a film. But it's easy to understand why some films just get that successful, for following all those things that, you know, makes a good balanced story and focus on every detail as much as possible. So a good cast, and then you have a good story that's memorable, and you want to watch it again, and you want to tell people about it. It's like that feeling of like wanting to communicate about films with other people, which isn't as common as I think as it was once back then, because I remember being younger and talking more about films. But you know, sometimes you just get older and realize that people don't really care too much about talking about films. It's just like you see it and then it's over. So the third thing I do want to talk about that is the most important about films is feeling convinced and feeling connected. So having a connection to the film and feeling convinced is so important, because if nothing else mattered, I think feeling convinced of what you saw, even if it was fiction, and having a full range of emotions tied to certain characters is really important, because that's what you carry with after the film is over. And sometimes if it makes you ask questions, that's even more important, because that means you actually cared about how the film like made you feel or think. And that's what is that is what makes a good film. If the film makes you think about it more and have these questions and makes you have a conversation with other people about it, you know that there are plenty of good things to talk about. But obviously the same can be said with a bad film. You can say a lot of terrible things about a bad film and why you felt it was bad. But if we're just talking about the film and why it was good, for sure it had to have the right actors. It for sure had to have a really good story, and made you feel convinced, because you were connected throughout beginning to end. And was that is what makes a great superhero film. So in relation to Deadpool and Wolverine, to sum it up really quick, I think that the film has a lot to do with what I just said. Was the casting and the story and feeling convinced throughout the whole thing. The only thing else I can add is obviously like this film had a lot of Easter eggs, had a lot of jokes that were breaking the fourth wall and the MCU and Disney Studios. So it's just kind of hilarious to see how other companies that haven't been producing their best quality work are being critiqued, and just to show that even Deadpool and Wolverine can bring back a dying franchise of superhero films. Like what's going on right now is Marvel and the MCU. So I don't think it's completely over for the MCU, of course. I still think that there are definitely a couple of golden eggs left to be seen. But I just don't like how this film wrapped up. If I'm going to be honest with you, it made me feel like it's almost like one of the last best things we're going to get from the MCU. But I'm sure I'm going to be wrong about that in a couple years, because it just seems like was the MCU and like the multiverse, there are more possibilities to get more films and have the other actors like do different roles. I mean, we have Robert Downey Jr. doing Doctor Doom now, so who's to say like there aren't gonna be more of the cast from the Avengers doing other roles that fit the multiverse? There are possibilities, and it's just up to the actors if they choose to do it. And I think it would be interesting to some degree if they do end up deciding to take on a different role, because it's really hard for new actors to also be believable in roles that, you know, are monumental in a way. Because I think that like even with a character like Doctor Doom, like you would need someone that's really intimidating, menacing, and cold, like cold to the bone. And there's not a lot of actors that I think that I know of that can do that. And also Doctor Doom is also a very intelligent person, so it just seems like, you know, he's calm, collective, evil, and also is a different person when he's not wearing his mask and his cape. So it's a whole package. It's a dual personality, and those kind of characters are very hard to play because they're not playing a character that's just Doctor Doom the whole time. Or, you know, like with Deadpool, he's not just always the merc with a mouth, he's also a boyfriend and possibly a husband to the woman that he's with. So you know, there are moments like that in cinema where it really tests the limits of an actor. That's why there's a lot of Batman movies, because I don't think there has been one actor that I can point out that has been a perfect combination of Bruce Wayne and Batman. So there are a lot of things like that. And even with Spider-Man, it's kind of the same thing. Like, I honestly think that Tobey Maguire was the closest thing to a great Spider-Man and a Peter Parker, because he was a really dorky Peter Parker and a Spider-Man. He was very serious about saving people. The only problem that I have with Tobey is that he wasn't as quippy. He didn't have a lot of jokes. So, you know, I don't feel like that came natural to him. It seemed like it was more natural as Andrew Garfield. And then when we got to Tom Holland, the jokes were a little bit more dorky. I don't think they were as funny, but you see the picture, like it's really hard to play a character when they're not wearing the costume versus being the hero. So I guess that's something that has to do with the first thing that I mentioned in this video, like the casting of the actors, because you would have to pick someone very exceptional to be able to play two characters at the same time, even though, you know, Spider-Man is just Spider-Man, but he's also Peter Parker. So I hope that doesn't confuse you, but that's all I really wanted to say throughout the whole entirety of this video, of course. And if it wasn't said before, I do give Deadpool and Wolverine an 8.5 out of 10. I just hope that there are other movies that make me prove otherwise, that this movie is a 9.5, because I would love to believe that there are going to be more films that are going to make the MCU something that is back out of the ground and into the glory that it once had. So, I hope this isn't just a one up for this year and then, nothing too memorable was what's coming next. That's why it's hard to give this film a really good score, because I'm not sure what's to come next. I obviously do think it deserves like a good amount of like recognition, of course. So that's all there really is to be said. I kind of joked about that in the beginning of the last video because there's not much to be said except that it's pretty great. If you love comic book movies, it's perfect. And it's really great for Marvel, because I think that they have been in a really bad place with like a lot of unmemorable TV shows and a few lackluster movies, I would say. I think there are more TV shows that aren't doing too well than there are films. So I wouldn't say that the films are like terrible. I think even the ones that aren't as good as the Avengers are still better than some people would like to say. But I know that there are a few that are really bad, and if you know, you know. So it's gonna be that sort of thing. So yeah, that's all I have for this video. If you like it, please leave a like, comment, subscribe, and yeah, feel free to check out other videos that I have on this channel, and also check out Coffee Mug Podcast. I will leave a link in the description for that. That's basically my school of life channel, just relatable problems and just some solutions to kind of mitigate going through life. It's different from this channel, of course, but I have a lot of ideas on like what I want to talk about besides films, so I felt like I just wanted to make another channel. So go ahead and check that out if you haven't already seen some things, and I'll be making more content on that channel soon. So yeah, I'm gonna get back to it, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.